Hi, this is Elizabeth Hartung, narrating my presentation on Disney, Copyright, and Cultural Imperialism for WGSS 325, Disney Gender Race Empire. I expect you're familiar with Charles Perrault's Cinderella. On screen are two of the defining moments of the story, where Cinderella got her name and where she got her glass shoes. Perrault published Cinderella in 1697, but the story is much older in the oral tradition. Originally, the shoes were made of a specific kind of fur, vair, V-A-I-R, but by the time Perrault heard the story, most people didn't know what the word meant, so Perrault wrote the similarly pronounced vair, V-E-R-R-E, meaning glass. Most adaptations of Perrault keep that magical detail. You see a short list of people who have adapted Perrault's Cinderella. Remember those names. There will be a quiz. As for why these people chose to adapt Perrault, they could. His work is centuries old, and like all art more than 100 years old, it is public domain around the world. Before I explain the concept of public domain, let me clarify your understanding of copyright law. Copyright, in modern understanding, is two rights with the same name. One is the exclusive right to copy a work in its entirety, such as by publishing the play Romeo and Juliet by Shakespeare. The other is the exclusive right to copy a work in substantial quantity, such as by producing the movie Romeo plus Juliet, starring DiCaprio and Danes. Copyright is not all-encompassing. There are conditions under which we can use copyrighted material without the copyright owner's permission. You see on screen what those conditions are. Transformative, by the way, means adding new material, meaning and/or context to the original work. And you see examples of what the fair use exemption does and does not protect. I'm concerned mostly with what fair use does not protect. Copyright law as we know it begins in England in 1710 with the Statute of Anne. 14-year copyright term with the option of renewal, where copyright meant only the right to publish, not the right to create derivative works. The first U.S. copyright law in 1790 was based on the Statute of Anne. The Copyright Act of 1909 extended the copyright term and renewal to twice as long as they were under the 1790 Act. The Copyright Act of 1976 was a needed update to copyright law, given the many technological advances since 1909. The law gave federal copyright protection to all works fixed in the medium of expression. Before this act, I would have relied on state copyright law to protect my not yet published story Applewood Ash, another Cinderella adaptation. Since this act, Applewood Ash has copyright protection because I wrote it down, and that fixed it in the medium of expression. This law also took away from the public the right to create derivative works, and gave that right to the copyright holders. But, one hand takes, one hand gives. It's set in stone, or legal code, the fair use exemption I talked about earlier. Perhaps most importantly, the 1976 Act extended copyright terms. If an individual creator published under her own name, the copyright term was her life plus 50 years. If the creator was a company, or someone publishing under a pen name or no name, the copyright term was 75 years total. The reasoning behind this, or any copyright term extension, has never been satisfactorily explained to me. Copyright protection is supposed to encourage artists to create art. How is providing longer copyright protection in 1976 to work of art created in 1928 going to encourage the creation of more art in 1928? Back to the public domain. This is where works go when the copyright term expires, or when they were never copyrighted at all. Many works before the 1976 Act never were copyrighted, on account of then current copyright law required a copyright notice on the work, and thus required the creator to care, at least a little, about having copyright protection. Anything over a century old is public domain around the world. Anything older than 1923 is public domain in the US. So are a lot of things newer than 1923. But the rules for what is and what is not public domain in the US are quite complicated, and it's safest to assume that anything more recent than 1922 is under copyright. For examples of public domain works, the originals of Scarborough Fair and Tam Lin, Beauty and the Beast, Romeo and Juliet, The Well-Tempered Clavier, Cinderella, The Frog Prince, and Rapunzel. What public domain means is that the rights exclusive to copyright holders no longer apply. We can reprint Romeo and Juliet. We can perform the play. We can translate it to Russian, Mandarin, or Yoruba. We can write a novel exactly following the plot of the play. We can create art that merely borrows from the play, such as Taylor Swift's Love Story, or Lisa Fiedler's Romeo's X, without worrying about the difference between something that's fair use and something that needs the copyright owner's permission. It'd be tricky to get his permission in any case. Shakespeare's dead. He is physically incapable of caring. Disney has benefited in many ways from the public domain. Here's a list of movies Disney couldn't have made if the works they're based on weren't public domain. Notice that they're all Disney classics, great financial successes, the cornerstones on which Disney's reputation and financial power are built. Other people who've benefited from the public domain. See, I told you there would be a quiz. Change of subject. Steamboat Willie, cartoon with enormous historical significance and even more significance to Disney. It was published in 1928 under the 1909 Copyright Act, which made its initial copyright expiration date 1956. When the copyright was renewed, that extended the expiration date to 1984. The copyright term extension in 1976 changed the expiration date to 2003. I find myself highly suspicious of the fact that there's less than a decade between 1976 and 1984. Back to copyright history. The Copyright Term Extension Act of 1998. It added 20 years to all copyright terms, ensuring that nothing will become public domain in the U.S. until 2019, and Steamboat Willie not until 2023. This is also called the Sonny Bono Copyright Act and the Mickey Mouse Protection Act. 3 guesses why, given the amount of money Disney put into making sure this act passed. Disney may be a large and powerful corporation, but its interests are those of the small group of people who run it. The Motion Picture Association of America and the Recording Industry Association of America are also powerful entities who represent the interests of a small group of people. Imperialism is one group, usually small and powerful and with leverage and a perceived position of superiority, using and maintaining that power and superiority over a large group of people. Disney and the MPAA and RIAA are in an excellent position to be culturally and economically imperialist. Disney is still benefiting from the public domain mind. 2010's Tangled is based on the Brother Grimm story Rapunzel, and November 2013's The Snow Queen on the eponymous story by Hans Christian Andersen. But Disney is going to considerable effort to limit the public domain. I can no longer legally make a short film based on the Grimm story Snow White and given the same title, because Disney has trademarked the phrase Snow White for various entertainment uses, including film. Disney definitely got copyright terms extended in 1998 to keep Steamboat Willie public domain, and I strongly suspect they did the same in 1976. I expect them to try again in a few years, because it is only a decade until Steamboat Willie's new copyright expiration date. Every time the copyright term grows, it gets harder to preserve culture that is not yet public domain. If a book's copyrighted, it can't go on Project Gutenberg or a similar archiving project. MP3 files of copyrighted music cannot be put on archive.org. Copyrighted films cannot be put on YouTube, not without the permission of the copyright owner. A lot of the time, the copyright owner says no. And a lot of the time, what copyright owner? If the art isn't worth enough to the copyright owner to keep it in print, we cannot experience the art. If it isn't worth enough to the copyright owner to keep it preserved, we will never be able to experience the art. Art is meant to be experienced, and art is meant to be transformed into new art. But if the art has ceased to exist, that can't happen. U.S. copyright law has always been based on the Copyright Clause of the U.S. Constitution. It says that rights to artworks belong to the creator for limited times, in order to encourage the creation of those artworks. The emphasis should be on the words, for limited times. Compare this quote from a supporter of the 1998 Copyright Term Extension Act. Sonny Bono wanted the term of copyright protection to last forever. I am informed by staff that such a change would violate the Constitution. There is also Jack Valente's proposal for term to last forever, less one day. Perhaps the committee may look at that next Congress. Forever, or forever less one day, which is the same exact thing whatever Jack Valente says, that's not limited. Extending copyright terms indefinitely, that's not limited. Disney and other mega media corps want to ensure that the public domain never grows again. The public domain is ours. Yours, mine, everyone's. And the deal was, as the deal always is, that a work of art once created will remain private property for a limited time, after which it becomes everyone's property to do with as we please. By limiting the expansion of the public domain, Disney is stealing from us. It's unconstitutional, and it's culturally and economically imperialist.